dear guests, I am also very delighted to introduce our second plenary talk speaker, who is Professor Dr. Corina Constantinescu from University of Liverpool, UK. Dr. Constantinescu is a professor of mathematics and she is the director of the Institute for Financial and Actuarial Mathematics in the Department of Mathematical Science at the University of Liverpool. Prior to being an academic, Dr. Constantinescu worked as an actuary and led the life insurance department of one of the first private Romanian insurance companies. Since 2013, together with Professor Severin Arnold from Lausanne, they have been organizing the party conferences for young researchers. The next one is in January 2023 in Valencia, I believe. Since 2018, she is regularly teaching and supervising Master of Science students from the African Institute of Mathematical Science Network. Her expertise is in analytical methods for deriving exact or asymptotic results for real probabilities with light or heavy tail assumptions in complex insurance risk models. Recently, she has been working fair insurance pricing when gender is not considered as a factor, and in financial inclusion, specifically fair pricing in the regulation of microfinance and microinsurance practices. During her sabbatical year, 22-23, she is a visiting scholar within the social finance program of the International Labour Organization United Nations. So let us welcome her together to have her talk entitled Subsidizing Inclusive Insurance to Reduce Impoverishment.
Good morning. Many thanks for this great honor to present at your 20 years anniversary. I'm extremely happy to be here, and I was impressed with your opening ceremony, in particular with the actuarial student who played piano. So congratulations for having such an atmosphere that encourages more than mathematics to happen in your institution. I am going to present something that I've been working on for the last 4 years, which is inclusive insurance, around inclusive insurance, and I hope by the end of my talk, everyone in this room will consider working in this field. So it's about raising awareness of this field and also encouraging you to contribute a little bit. I don't mean drop your research and do this. I mean find aspects of your research that could be applied in inclusive insurance. Now, the mathematical part of my presentation is based on an article that I've written with, as you see, 4 other co-authors. Jose and Sabrina from University of Lausanne, Kira is from University of Liverpool, and Suiho is from Central Washington University. So, I will first introduce inclusive insurance, and when coming to a concrete example and a concrete model, I will talk about trapping time and subsidizing techniques, and as a conclusion we will see what you all can do about it. Now, what is inclusive insurance? Inclusive insurance or microinsurance or impact insurance or mass insurance relates to provision of insurance services for low-income populations without access to mainstream insurance or alternative risk management solutions. So, as you might imagine, more than half of the world's population would be in that category. We will consider what low income means. So for that, we will be looking at poverty line, right above the poverty line or below poverty line. The international extreme poverty line is $1.90 per day. So we will consider that everyone living under the poverty line cannot escape that, because everything they make, they just keep it to survive. But the ones above, they might have means to consider insurance or other financial services to help themselves and better their lives. So this is the main idea. Now, 1.9 or lower should be subsidized automatically by Social Security. But what will happen with someone that makes $2 a day? Are they wealthy enough? Obviously not. And it's seen that it's considered that we would look at poor population, would define everyone under the poverty line, wealthy somewhere above, and in between poor and wealthy. That bracket is referred to as the missing middle. And this missing middle is actually a very large proportion of the world population. In the world of 7 billion people, 5 billion are uninsured. So these are the people in this missing middle that we are looking at. And as you see in the slide, 9% of the world population actually lives under the poverty line. Now, microinsurance or inclusive insurance currently is done relatively ad hoc in Africa, South Asia, and South America, because there is not necessarily a lot of thought, a lot of actuarial thought put into designing products, regulating such products, and selling such products. Of course, there are the barriers for it, which are lack of means, lack of financial literacy, and lack of distribution channels, as they call them. But more recently, as my examples will show, looking at the Actuary magazine, it becomes a topic that actuarial science is picking up on. And for instance, in July 2018, in this article around microinsurance, what was discussed were the so-called freemium, so not premium, freemium, meaning that when you take insurance without paying, when you join an association, when you become a member or an association of some organizations. Now, he was referring, the article refers mainly to health insurance, and again, just to put some numbers in the context, that's why I have my little notes here, because I forget these numbers. For instance, in Africa, only 3% of world's health workers are in Africa, and they are fighting 24% of the global disease using 1% of the world's health expenditure. So health insurance would help enormously in these countries. Now, although in 2018, probably 15, 17, I could see only one isolated article in the Actuary magazine around microinsurance. Since 2021, almost every edition has something related to microinsurance. So it's becoming a trend to think about and to discuss it. For instance, this article mentions that more than 2 billion, I said 5 billion are uninsured, but more than 2 billion are unable to pay for insurance, although they live a little above the poverty line, because they lack the means to, or they lack the knowledge, they lack the local and the legal and the financial context for such a thing. Of course, the challenges of microinsurance are moral hazard and anti-selection and all sorts of correlated risk, very poor administration and so on. Now, from May 2021, one example of how this could work is in the so-called captive audience. What they did, they created cells, they call it cells, cell provider and cell owner, which work like an insurance and reinsurance if you want. So a cell provider is the insurance company, but a cell owner could be a church or a mobile company or a retailer. So they would be the church, retailer, or phone company, will be the one selling insurance and having their community participate in insurance practices. Although this works, it's very hard to regulate such products. But these are the kind of things that are happening in the world currently. Of course, microinsurance is thought to be so small but mighty because there are many of these people, even if they contribute a little, at the end could be a profitable business. And for instance, crop insurance or agriculture insurance by means of the so-called parametric insurance is something that picked up very much in these countries. And it is still a steep learning curve of how to implement, how to price, how to reduce price, and how to attract, how to design products that become affordable and could be helping people escape poverty. So now, after this introduction, I want to show how we contributed research-wise to this field. So, as you heard, I work in risk theory. So in the risk theory, for those of you familiar with it, we have the compound risk model, where we look at income of an insurance company, so the total income of one insurance company that receives premiums and pays claims. So in are premiums, out are claims. So we use that kind of in and out model, but now we look at one particular household. And if in the classical risk theory model, we look at the probability of crossing zero or defaulting, now we would look at the probability of crossing the poverty line. So, for an individual a household, we assume that we have an income IT and that we split in consumption and saving. So someone can use for their expenses or save a little bit. Now, there is a critical level of income, I star, and people that do not have an I star level of income will not save. They will just use everything they will consume everything. If they have a little more, then they will, after consuming, they will invest everything that's above I star. That's the assumption of our model. And with the investment, we assume that they would invest smartly in a bond or in a market that pays a fixed interest rate. So their savings will grow exponentially in between. They will grow exponentially. And whenever, so the accumulated capital will grow C times. So this is the saving that they will put, they will grow exponentially. And we assume that the income we see the income also as a percentage. Now, as mentioned, the amount of capital invested will be whatever there is above that critical capital under which the household lives in poverty. In this investment, now in this R, It's not only the interest rate from the bank, we put in that R all the other costs or all the other safety loadings, all the other administrative costs. And now, what are our main assumptions? That households are susceptible to large losses. We assume that the occurrence of losses occur at a Poisson process, and in between two losses we wait a lambda exponential time. And we assume that the losses are independent of how much they weighted and IIDR, and they have a common distribution G. When we are to model the capital process with these random valued losses, if Ti is the ith event of a Poisson process that starts at 0, in between two of these events, the process will grow, as in the first part, will grow at xti minus x star times the exponential. And at the jump time, an xi, they will pay the claim. Now, this will happen in both cases. If you are above the poverty line, you have the poverty line plus all the money that you accumulated from the investments. If you are under the poverty line, you just have the capital you started with. But no matter what happens, when a loss occurs, you have to pay it. And this loss can drag you even further into poverty. So trapping refers to the event that if someone falls below under the poverty line, that they cannot escape without help. We will denote by tau x the first time this event happens, and we will consider the area of poverty, the area, the time at which the x tau is less than x star, the area of poverty, and we will call this time the trapping time, and the probability of this time to be finite, we call it the trapping probability. Now, what we could see is that if we assume that the losses behave exponentially, have an exponential distribution with parameter alpha, the trapping probability becomes this incomplete gamma function that depends on on lambda, how much you weight in between two losses, depends on R, that was our bond accumulation, and of course depends on x star, the poverty line. And then we assume, so this happens, no insurance. Then we assume that these people buy insurance. The people above the poverty line buy some insurance and want to see what happens once they buy insurance. So we consider a special insurance scheme where we cover a percentage of the losses. So not the full loss, a percentage of the loss is covered by the insurance company. And then we capture the premium paid in this R. So we do not put an extra term for the premium. We try to capture it in this growth of the capital in between losses. And surprisingly, what did we see, or maybe not so surprisingly after thinking about it, it's true that the lines are not very clear. We saw that for an initial capital, if you could see between 1 and 4 here, actually you are better off not buying insurance. So these people above poverty line, but not too much above the poverty line, they are better off without paying insurance for the simple fact that the price of insurance itself can drag them under the poverty line. So that will be the explanation. After a while, of course, insurance it pays off. So our recommendation is that for this bracket that is worse off with insurance, the government should provide subsidies, because by subsidizing the vulnerable people to have insurance in case of losses, they will not fall under the poverty line, and once they do not fall under the poverty line, they are not the responsibility of the government to pay them social security. So we could see that the cost of the government on the long term is lower if they subsidize insurance than if they wait to pay social security. Of course, depends on what kind of subsidies are there. So the conclusion is microinsurance alone would not be enough to reduce the probability of trapping for those very close to the poverty line. But with subsidies, with smart subsidies, actually it could help reduce poverty, or reduce the numbers under the poverty line. Now, smart subsidies are very easy to declare, but very hard to implement. And what kind of subsidies are there, or we can propose? So, one scheme is that to include it in the premium, in the loading factor. So, in other words, the government pays a part of the premium, or the government pays the full premium as long as the household is in a certain bracket. Once they become wealthier, they stop paying the subsidy. This is very easy to say theoretically, but very hard to check in practice. So, in practice, they are discussing more the so-called exit strategies from subsidies. So they offer a subsidy of 100% and they start decreasing to 80, 60, 40, hoping that over time, with investment, these people will help themselves to stay wealthier. So when considering subsidies, we have considered quite a few subsidies. We noticed from the ones we looked at that the best subsidy, the optimal, will be indeed to pay the premium fully of those that are worse off when they have insurance. So for what I call back the missing middle, they are the ones that are above the poverty line but not wealthy enough. So before coming here, I was at a conference in microinsurance where the majority were practitioners or NGOs, and they say that yes, it's a beautiful theory, but not necessarily easy to implement, because how they will not declare the moral hazard and so on will come into place. However, subsidies are indeed something that is practiced. For instance, in India, 95% of insurance premiums are subsidized by the government, and here I refer to crop insurance, this parametric index insurance. So it's the only way forward at the moment, but a lot more can be looked at. So I will have concluding remarks because I would like you to have questions and suggestions. So our results suggest that in order to help, the microinsurance companies should be partnering with government, such that this kind of partnership, where it's a mixture of private and public, so premium subsidies and so on, would be the only way to mitigate against having more people under the poverty line. So, another than the ones that I showed in a simulation slide, what is very common in practice is the so-called bundling, where you bundle insurance with loans, in the sense that a microfinance institution, it's an institution that gives microloans, microcredit. And a microcredit can be $5 or can be $200, but microcredits with very high interest rates usually. But when they get a loan, in many cases, they also get insurance against death or accident. So that's one way of penetrating they call the market with some forms of insurance. And this is indeed something to analyze also from a theoretical point of view, how that really works. Another form of bundling that I'm just mentioning because maybe someone is interested is when they sell seeds. They sell seeds with insurance. They sell you a better form of seed, but automatically you are insured. So it's hard to imagine how to price that kind of insurance that's included in a product. But nevertheless, any risk management strategies are extremely helpful. And my hope is that microinsurance it will be transformed from just low premiums for small coverage into affordable premium for including people in financial services. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Constantinescu, for this very nice presentation. Interesting ideas. Any questions? Yes.
Dr. Corina, thank you very much for your really nice presentation. And as you explained, you say that it's really hard to check your theory on the real scenarios. Anyway, I want to ask this question. Have you tried to check or apply your theory using some real data? If yes, what kind of data set, like time series or penal data or whatever, and what kind of variables have you used? If yes.
Thank you. Very good question. So we are trying that. What is very hard to find is data of this above poverty line. So we just learned there is a data set where they measure how many people escaped poverty. So we are trying to, but we haven't seen it yet. We are trying to see with that kind of data because we have no idea how large is this bracket. I want to say, for instance, in Philippines, they say that 95% of population live between 1 and 12 poverty lines, so between $2 and $22 a day. So this is their income. But I do not know in general where is that bracket and of this missing middle that it's the most vulnerable. Because at the moment, the meaning of insurance is to escape this vicious circle of vulnerability, poverty. We want to bring them a bit higher so they don't have to do it. But yes, we do not have yet this data, but we hope with this escape from poverty indexes to figure out how long it took them, how many they were, to maybe calibrate.
Thank you very much. And I have one, not just suggestion, just curious about it. Is it possible to check your theory on special group? For example, you can simulate and check their real income states and how they spend their money. And suppose we have such an insurance company that provides them such special premiums or that pays some percentage of their claims, and maybe it's possible to follow them during some time in order to check as a dynamic of their poverty or positive income or negative income. What do you think?
Yeah, that would be possible. So what they do in microinsurance and microfinance, they have these financial diaries, but where people write everything they own and what they did. I wish I could be so organized. But that would be quite a bit of work to go to those diaries, translate, even for a small group. But that would be one way to do it, yes, I agree. It is a very good question. We have no real sense yet of how can we really determine how many of these people are in the missing middle. With our theory, and in general, but with our theory. But very good question. Yes?
So, thank you very much. I don't know much about insurance, to be honest, so my questions could be stupid, but yeah. The first question is, would your setting hold in an environment where we have negative or zero interest rates, so this effective capital growth is not there?
We need capital growth.
Right?
Yes.
But, I mean, so we have such a phenomena ongoing.
Yes, absolutely.
During the last years? Okay. And the second question is, you mentioned about specific type of subsidies. And one of them was, if I'm not wrong, the government can subsidize people, their income lies within a band just above the poverty line. Wouldn't this in effect, wouldn't this be something like actually pulling the poverty line up? Like from the government's perspective?
Very good question. I would think the social security, so this is a conjecture, I haven't checked the number, but I would assume when they are under poverty, the social security for under the poverty would be higher than the premium that they will pay for those in this missing middle.
Looking at from the point of view that where we look at the whole system, including the insurance companies, because then we are pushing the whole burden into the insurance companies, which may suffer a lot if some systematic events occur, like floods or earthquakes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, but it's a good point. Yes, why not? So, as I said in the beginning, I'm converting. So any ideas are welcome. So what I noticed also this conference I've been to, we were like 5 academics and 2 from mathematics and 3 from economics. It's not, I think it's an area that could use research with real impact. With a lot of data, because we always complain we don't have data, they have a lot of data. And I think very good feeling at the end that we actually make a positive difference.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other question? We have some time.
Thank you for this very interesting topic, and it's very actually reflecting the realities of the insurance, especially underdeveloped or developing countries. Why there's so few interest due to the income sanctions, income problems. My question would be first, as this scheme is going to consider a very small compensation in exchange of might be a big risk. So is there a kind of capital, what would be the starting or capital allocation or a cap to the risk, and how we can measure this, or how can we set this? And the second one would be related to the target group which are above the poverty line at a certain level. If this level can be established, that could be already set. That could be an interesting product for the ones who are remaining within that band to attract such a product. Thank you.
I agree. And just to mention, I think we think of microinsurance and inclusive insurance only for low income countries, but I think there is scope in all countries at the moment for. It's better to call it inclusive insurance and impact insurance because we don't want to call it insurance for the poor. They say that people feel offended if you refer to it that way. But I think there is scope for affordable premiums and coverage everywhere. Yes, and anything like capital allocation, all these methods that we know could help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? We have some time for one last question if there is. I think that's not the case, so let's thank Dr.